Welcome back to the deep dive. We love to dig into stuff you guys are working on, and today it's something I know a lot of you are tackling: learning English.
Yeah, it can be a real challenge sometimes.
For sure. So we found this cool blog post. It's all about like the 15 most common mistakes that English learners make.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that one.
Yeah, it's good. So we thought we'd do a deep dive on it, kind of like a cheat sheet,
Mhm.
so you can avoid the pitfalls and speed up your progress.
Yeah, make those mistakes work for you.
Exactly. And the best part is we're not just going to like list out the mistakes. We're going to give you actual solutions so you can overcome them.
That's right. We're all about turning those mistakes into stepping stones.
All right. So mistake number one. This is something I think we've all been guilty of at some point, focusing too much on grammar.
Right. Mhm.
I know I have.
Oh, yeah.
I've spent hours like lost in the maze of verb tenses, like present perfect, continuous, and all that.
Oh, yeah.
And then I get so scared to speak up because I'm like, what if I use the wrong article or something?
Right, right.
Have you ever felt that way?
Oh, totally. It's
Yeah.
a super common trap. It's easy to get bogged down in all the rules and forget what really matters.
Yeah. So if we're not supposed to obsess over grammar, what should we be doing instead?
Well, think about it this way. When you're chatting with friends in your native language,
Mm-hmm.
are you constantly analyzing every sentence for perfect grammar?
Probably not.
No, not at all. Communication is about connecting with people, not dissecting every word.
That's so true. It's like we get so caught up in trying to be perfect that we forget to just relax and have a conversation.
Exactly. And that's where fluency comes from practice, not perfection.
So it's more like learning to ride a bike. You don't master the physics first. You just got to get on and try it.
Exactly. You're going to fall a few times, but eventually you get the hang of it.
I like that analogy. All right. So speaking of falling down, let's talk about mistake number two, being afraid to make mistakes.
Oh, this is a big one.
I have a really embarrassing story, actually. So one time I was trying to order a coffee and I accidentally asked for a cat instead of a cup. I know, right? The barista looked at me like I had two heads. I wanted to disappear.
I can only imagine. But you know what? That's a perfect example of how mistakes can actually be really valuable learning moments.
Yeah, in a way.
Yeah, because now you'll never forget the difference between cat and cup.
That's true. I guess I learned the hard way.
But that's how we learn, right?
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, even native speakers make mistakes all the time.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that.
Language is constantly changing, with new slang expressions, even grammar rules popping up, so nobody's perfect.
It's like language is alive and it's constantly evolving.
Exactly. It's dynamic, which is what makes it so fascinating.
Okay, that definitely takes some of the pressure off, knowing that even native speakers mess up sometimes.
For sure.
All right, let's
Well-
move on to mistake number three. This one can feel super overwhelming, learning too many words at once.
Oh, yeah. I remember staring at those giant vocabulary lists, feeling like my brain was about to explode.
Me too. It's like, where do you even begin?
Right? It's like drinking from a fire hose. You don't need to know every single word in the dictionary to communicate effectively.
That's true, but how do you choose which words to focus on?
Well, I always recommend starting with high-frequency words, the ones you'll use most often in everyday conversations.
That makes sense. But how do you actually like learn those words and remember them?
One thing that helped me was creating flashcards, but not just with the word itself. Write out an example sentence that shows how that word is used in context.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, it helps you remember the meaning and how to use it grammatically. Plus, it makes it more fun than just staring at a list of words.
So it's all about making it practical and actually using the words you're learning.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on to mistake number four. And this one is something I'm definitely guilty of ignoring: listening practice.
Oh, yeah.
I get so caught up in reading and writing that I forget about listening sometimes.
It's easy to do, but listening is so crucial for understanding spoken English, getting your pronunciation right, and even learning how to structure sentences naturally.
It's true, when I listen to native speakers, I notice how they use their voice, the rhythm and intonation. It's like I'm picking up on those patterns just by listening.
Exactly. And you're also getting exposed to different accents and slang. It can be really helpful.
Yeah, but sometimes it's hard to find like engaging listening practice.
Yeah.
What are some fun ways to do it?
There are so many options these days. You could watch movies or TV shows in English, even with subtitles at first.
Oh, yeah, I love doing that.
It's a great way to get immersed in the language and pick up on natural dialogue. Then there are podcasts you can listen to about topics that interest you.
Oh, yeah, I love podcasts too.
And don't forget about YouTube. There are tons of channels that cover things you're already passionate about, so you can learn while having fun.
It's like you're making learning English part of your daily routine without even realizing it.
Exactly. And the more you listen, the more you'll start to understand and even think in English.
Okay, so we've covered the first four mistakes, and I'm already feeling like I have a better understanding of how to approach learning English.
That's great to hear.
But we still have 11 more mistakes to go through, and we want to make sure we have enough time to cover them all.
Right.
So how about we shift gears a bit and do a rapid fire round where we quickly go over each mistake and highlight the key takeaways.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Okay, mistake number 5 is sticking to just one learning method. It's like you wouldn't use just one ingredient to cook a delicious meal, right?
Exactly. You need a mix of reading, writing, speaking, and listening to really get fluent.
So it's like creating a buffet of learning experiences and finding what works best for you.
Exactly. What are some ways you like to learn?
I love using apps and watching videos. It helps me stay engaged and motivated.
Those are great options.
Speaking of motivation, let's talk about mistake number 6, comparing yourself to others.
Oh, this is a big one.
I know I've definitely fallen into that trap, especially with social media. You see people who seem fluent in 5 languages while you're still struggling with basic verb conjugations.
Right. It's so easy to get discouraged, but it's so important to remember that everyone learns at their own pace.
It's like comparing apples and oranges. We're all on different paths.
Exactly. Focus on your own journey. Celebrate your own milestones, and remember that every step forward is a victory.
So what are some milestones you're proud of in your English learning journey?
I'm proud of myself for being able to have a conversation with someone in English, even if it's not perfect.
That's awesome. I'm proud of myself for sticking with it even when it gets
That
challenging.
was a huge accomplishment.
Speaking of challenges, mistake number 7 is not speaking enough. I get it. Putting yourself out there can be scary, but it's the best way to actually get better at speaking.
Absolutely. The more you practice, the more comfortable you'll become.
So what are some ways you suggest people overcome this fear?
One of the best ways is to find a safe and supportive environment to practice, like a language partner or a conversation group.
And even just talking to yourself out loud in English can be helpful.
Exactly. The key is to just start speaking.
And if you find yourself constantly translating everything in your head, well, that's mistake number 8.
Right? Well, relying too much on translations can actually slow you down. It prevents you from thinking in English, which is essential for fluency.
So instead of translating, try describing things around you in English, even simple sentences.
Exactly. Force your brain to engage with the language directly.
Okay, so what about when those moments of doubt creep in and you feel like giving up? Well, that's mistake number 9, giving up too soon.
Learning a language is a journey, not a sprint. There will be moments of frustration, but it's important to remember why you started learning English in the first place.
Yeah, think about the doors it will open for you, the connections you'll be able to make, the experiences you'll be able to have.
Exactly. What are some of the reasons that motivate you to keep learning English?
For me, it's about being able to connect with people from all over the world and experience different cultures.
That's beautiful.
Speaking of connecting with people, mistake number 10 is neglecting pronunciation.
It's true that good pronunciation is key for clear communication.
But English pronunciation can be so tricky.
It can be, but there are things you can do to improve it. Listen closely to how native speakers pronounce words, mimic their intonation and stress patterns, and don't be afraid to use online tools like Forvo or Youglish.
I'll have to check those out.
They're super helpful.
Okay, mistake number 11 can be tough, especially for those of us who don't like to hear about our mistakes, avoiding feedback.
Feedback is one of the most valuable tools we have for improvement.
But it can be hard to take sometimes.
Try to see feedback not as criticism, but as guidance from someone who wants to help you succeed.
Who do you usually ask for feedback on your English?
I usually ask my language partner and my English teacher.
Me too. Their feedback has helped me so much.
It's invaluable.
Speaking of needing a little help, mistake number 12 is studying without a goal.
It's like setting off on a journey without a destination in mind.
Yeah, you might wander around and see some interesting things, but you're unlikely to get where you want to go.
Exactly. Having a specific goal gives you direction and motivation.
So what are some of your goals for learning English?
My goal is to be able to read English novels without having to look up every word.
That's a great goal. I'm working towards being able to hold a conversation about my hobbies in English.
That's awesome.
Which brings us to mistake number 13, ignoring cultural context.
Language is so much more than just words and grammar. It's a reflection of a culture's values, beliefs, and history.
So by understanding the cultural context, you'll be able to communicate more effectively and avoid misunderstandings.
Exactly.
How do you usually try to learn about English-speaking cultures?
I love watching movies and TV shows. It's a fun way to get a glimpse into different cultures and learn some slang and idioms along the way.
Me too. But sometimes I feel like I forget things I've learned if I don't review them regularly, and that's actually mistake number 14, skipping review.
Review is essential for making sure the information we learn sticks in our brains.
It's like exercising a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Exactly. Schedule time each week to review previous lessons, use flashcards, or take quizzes, make it fun.
I love that, make it fun. And that actually leads us to our final mistake number 15, and maybe the most important one of all, not having fun.
Learning English should be enjoyable. If you're not having fun, you're less likely to stick with it.
So how do we inject more fun into our language learning journey?
Find ways to make it engaging and entertaining. Do you have any favorite ways to make learning English fun?
I love listening to music and trying to sing along. It's a great way to learn new vocabulary and improve your pronunciation. And I love trying to cook new dishes from English-speaking cultures.
Those are great ideas. It's all about finding what works for you and making learning a part of your life.
This has been a whirlwind tour of common English learning mistakes, but we've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to explore.
In part 2, we're going to go even deeper and explore some practical strategies and resources to help you overcome these challenges and reach your full potential.
We'll give you all the tools you need to succeed.
So stay tuned. All right, so we're back and ready to dive even deeper into these English learning mistakes.
Yeah, let's pick up where we left off.
Perfect. So we were talking about sticking to just one learning method, mistake number 5.
Right, like using just one ingredient to make a meal. It's going to be pretty bland.
Yeah, you need a variety of flavors and textures.
Exactly. Think about it. If you only use textbooks to learn English, you might miss out on the spontaneity of real conversations.
Right, or if you only use apps, you might not get a deep understanding of grammar.
It's all about finding that balance, finding what works best for you, and creating your own personalized learning menu.
I love that analogy. So how can we make sure we're creating that balanced menu of learning experiences?
Well, first you got to figure out what you enjoy. You know, maybe you like learning grammar rules from textbooks, but you prefer speaking practice with a language partner.
Right. Or maybe you love the gamified approach of apps, but you also want to immerse yourself in English movies and music.
Exactly. It's about experimenting with different methods and finding what clicks for you.
It's like creating your own language learning recipe.
It's exactly find those ingredients that work best for you and create something delicious.
Okay, so let's move on to mistake number 6, comparing yourself to others. This is a tough one.
It is. It's so easy to fall into that trap.
Especially with social media. You know, you see people who seem fluent in like 5 liftages, and you're like, wait, I'm still struggling with present perfect.
Right. But it's so important to remember that everyone's journey is different.
Yeah, we all have different backgrounds, different learning styles, different goals.
Exactly. It's like comparing apples and oranges.
So instead of comparing ourselves to others, what should we be focusing on?
Focus on your own starting point and how far you've come. Celebrate your own milestones, no matter how big or small.
So it's all about celebrating those individual wins.
Exactly. And if you find yourself feeling discouraged, try to reframe it as inspiration. Reach out to those people. Ask for advice. Learn from their experience.
So turn comparison into collaboration.
Exactly. We can all learn from each other and support each other's progress.
I love that. Okay, let's move on to mistake number 7, not speaking enough. I think this is something a lot of English learners struggle with, especially at the beginning.
Oh, yeah. It can be super intimidating to put yourself out.
Especially when you're not confident in your skills yet.
Right. But the thing is, the more you speak, the more comfortable you'll become.
It's like any skill practice makes progress.
Exactly. So how do we overcome that fear of speaking?
Well, I think finding a safe and supportive environment is key,
Definitely like a language partner or a conversation group.
where you can practice without feeling judged.
Exactly. And remember, even small steps count.
Yeah, you don't have to jump into giving a presentation right away.
No, start with simple conversations like ordering coffee or asking for directions.
And if you don't have a language partner, you can even talk to yourself in English.
That's a great idea. Narrate your day practice pronunciation. Have imaginary conversations.
Whatever helps you get comfortable using your voice.
Exactly. The key is to just start speaking.
All right, so let's talk about mistake number 8, relying too much on translations.
Ah, yes, the translation crutch.
I'm so guilty of this one. It's so tempting to just look up every word in the dictionary.
I know, but it can actually hinder your progress.
How so?
Well, it prevents you from thinking in English. You're constantly translating in your head instead of just letting the language flow.
That makes sense. So how do we break free from that translation crutch?
Start by describing things around you in English, even if it's just simple sentences.
Like, instead of thinking that's a red apple, think that apple is red.
Exactly. You're shifting the word order in your mind to match the English structure.
And over time, that'll become more natural.
Absolutely. And when you encounter new words, try to guess their meaning from the context before you look them up.
It's like becoming a language detective.
Exactly. You're using your powers of deduction.
I like that. Okay, let's talk about mistake number 9, giving up too soon.
This is a big one.
Learning a language can be so challenging, and there are definitely moments where you feel like giving up.
For sure, there will be plateaus and setbacks. It's all part of the process.
But it's important to remember why you started learning English in the first place.
Exactly. What are those goals, those dreams, those motivations that are driving you?
And focus on the positive aspects of the journey.
Yeah.
What are you enjoying about learning English?
What progress have you made that you're proud of?
It's all about finding those little wins that keep you motivated.
And remember, you're not alone in this journey. There are millions of people around the world learning English.
We're all in this together.
Exactly. Connect with other learners, share your experiences, support each other.
Okay, let's move on to mistake number 10, neglecting pronunciation. This is another area where a lot of English learners struggle.
Yeah. English pronunciation can be tricky.
It's so unpredictable sometimes.
It can be, but there are definitely things you can do to improve.
Like what?
Well, one technique I recommend is shadowing. Find a recording of a native English speaker and try to mimic their pronunciation as closely as possible.
So it's like karaoke for language learning.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to exaggerate. At first, overemphasize those sounds. Focus on the mouth movement.
And eventually you'll start to internalize those patterns.
Exactly. And remember, pronunciation is a skill that develops over time. So be patient with yourself.
Okay, so let's talk about mistake number 11, avoiding feedback. I think this is a tough one for a lot of people.
It can be, especially if you're a perfectionist.
Or if you're afraid of making mistakes.
But feedback is so valuable for growth.
So how can we make ourselves more receptive to feedback even when it's not positive?
Well, try to shift your perspective. Instead of seeing feedback as criticism, see it as a gift.
A gift.
Yeah. Someone is taking the time to offer you their insights and help you improve.
So it's an act of generosity.
Exactly. And remember, the person giving you feedback wants to see you succeed. They see your potential.
That's a good way to look at it. Okay, mistake number 12, studying without a goal.
This is like going on a trip without knowing where you're going.
Yeah, you might see some interesting things along the way, but you'll probably end up lost.
Yeah.
Having a goal gives you direction and purpose.
So how do we set effective language learning goals?
Start by asking yourself, why am I learning English? What do I want to be able to do with this language?
And then break down that big goal into smaller, more manageable steps.
Exactly. So instead of saying, I want to be fluent in English, you might say, I want to be able to order food at a restaurant in English by the end of the month.
Those smaller goals feel much more achievable.
And as you achieve those smaller goals, you build momentum and confidence.
Okay, so let's talk about mistake number 13, ignoring cultural context.
Ah, yes. Language and culture go hand in hand.
So it's not enough to just learn the words and grammar. You need to understand the cultural nuances as well.
Exactly. It's about understanding the why behind the why. Why do people greet each other in a certain way? What are the unspoken rules of etiquette?
It's like becoming a cultural detective.
Exactly. You're uncovering those hidden layers of meaning.
I love that. Okay, let's move on to mistake number 14, skipping review.
Ah, review, review, review. It's so important. But it's so easy to forget about.
I know we get caught up in learning new things, but review is essential for making sure that knowledge sticks.
It's like exercising a muscle.
Exactly. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
So how can we make review more fun and engaging?
Well, you can use flashcards, spaced repetition software. You can even create your own quizzes and games.
Turn it into a game.
Exactly. Make it something you look forward to.
And finally, mistake number 15, not having fun.
This is probably the most important mistake of all.
If you're not enjoying the process, you're less likely to stick with it.
Exactly. So find ways to make learning English fun and engaging.
What are some of your favorite ways to make it fun?
Well, I love listening to music in English, watching movies, trying to cook new dishes from English-speaking cultures.
Those are great ideas. It's all about finding what works for you and making learning a part of your life.
Exactly. And remember, there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Experiment. Try new things, have fun.
That's the key.
This has been such an insightful conversation. I'm feeling so inspired to keep practicing and experimenting with these different strategies.
I'm glad to hear that.
So what can our listeners look forward to in part 3 of this deep dive?
Well, in the final part, we're going to share some of our favorite resources and tools that can help you take your English learning to the next level.
Ooh, I can't wait to hear about them.
We'll cover everything from apps and websites to podcasts and YouTube channels.
So many great resources out there.
It's an exciting time to be learning English.
I agree. So stay tuned, listeners. We've got even more to share with you. Okay, so we've talked about the mistakes and we've brainstormed ways to turn those mistakes into like stepping stones, you know?
Right, exactly.
Now it's time for the fun part. Like, what are the actual tools and resources that can help us on this English learning adventure?
Yeah, it's like we've been building this toolkit together, and now we get to fill it with all the cool gadgets and gizmos.
I love that analogy. So where do we even begin? Like, what are some of the must-have tools for English learners?
Well, in this day and age, you got to start with language learning apps, right?
Yeah, those are everywhere now.
They are. Yeah. And for good reason. They're fun, they're convenient, and they make practicing English feel like a game.
Yeah, I've tried a few, and I'm always amazed by how engaging they can be.
Me too. So one that's popular for a reason is Duolingo.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, it's free, it's user-friendly, and it covers a ton of languages, including English.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what are some other apps that you like?
Well, another one that I really like is Memrise.
Memrise, okay.
It uses a spaced repetition system, which is super effective for memorizing new words and phrases.
Oh, that's interesting. I'll have to check that out.
You should. And if you're looking for something a bit more comprehensive, Babbel is excellent.
Babbel, okay.
It has in-depth lessons on grammar, vocabulary pronunciation, even cultural insights.
Wow, so it's like a whole package.
It is.
Yeah.
It's great for taking your English to the next level.
Awesome. So we've got apps covered. What about those of us who prefer a more traditional approach, like with textbooks?
Textbooks definitely still have their place, especially for building a strong foundation in grammar.
For sure. So what are some textbooks that you recommend?
Well, one that I always recommend is the Oxford Learner's Grammar Series.
Okay, I've seen that one around.
Yeah, it's a classic for a reason. It's clear, concise, and has tons of helpful examples.
Perfect for grammar nerds like me.
Exactly. And if you prefer something a bit more lively and engaging, English File is a popular choice.
Okay, what's that one like?
It's known for its communicative approach. So it focuses on helping learners actually use the language in real-world situations.
Oh, that's cool. So it's less about memorizing rules and more about actually communicating.
Exactly. It has lots of dialogues and role-playing activities so you can practice your speaking skills.
I like that. So we've got apps and textbooks. What about resources for auditory learners? You know, people who learn best by listening.
Well, for those folks, podcasts are goldmine.
Podcasts, yes, I love podcasts.
There's a whole world of podcasts out there specifically designed for English language learners.
No way.
Right.
Really?
Yeah, it's amazing. So one that's super popular is Voice of America, Learning English.
Okay, I've heard of Voice of America.
They cover current events, interesting stories, and it's all tailored to different levels of English proficiency.
Oh, that's cool. So you can find something that matches your skill level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you're specifically interested in American English, All Ears English is a great one.
All ears English, okay.
The hosts are really engaging, and they break down common expressions, pronunciation tips, and conversational strategies.
Perfect for those of us who want to sound like a native speaker.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so we've covered listening. What about our visual learners, the folks who prefer to learn by watching?
Well, for those folks, YouTube is a treasure trove.
Oh my gosh, yes. YouTube is incredible.
There are so many talented English teachers on there sharing their knowledge through video lessons and vlogs.
It's amazing. So one channel that I highly recommend is English with Lucy.
English with Lucy, I've heard of her.
She's fantastic. She covers a wide range of topics, and she always makes learning fun and engaging.
Awesome. And what about channels that focus on American English?
Well, Rachel's English is excellent for that.
Rachel's English, okay.
She's an expert in American English pronunciation and accent reduction. So if you want to work on your accent, she's your go-to girl.
Perfect. So we've got apps, textbooks, podcasts, YouTube channels. It's like we've got all our bases covered.
We do, but don't forget about the power of online communities.
Oh, yeah. Those are great.
There are tons of forums, Facebook groups, and online platforms where English learners from all over the world can connect with each other.
It's so motivating to know you're not alone in this journey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can share tips, ask questions, practice your English, and just support each other.
It's like having a whole cheerleading squad behind you.
Exactly.
Ah.
All right, so I think we've covered a ton of ground today. What are your final takeaways?
Well, first of all, I'm so glad we did this deep dive. It's given me so much to think about and so many resources to explore.
Me too.
And I think the biggest takeaway for me is that learning English doesn't have to be boring or overwhelming.
No, not at all.
There are so many fun and engaging ways to learn, and it's all about finding what works best for you.
Exactly. It's about making it a part of your life, not just another chore on your to-do list.
And remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
So be patient, be persistent, and most importantly, have fun.
I love that.
Yeah,
So to all our listeners out there, keep practicing, keep exploring, and keep believing in yourself.
you got this.
We're all in this together. Until next time, happy learning.